What's
Hey,
up,
fellas.
everybody? How
What's
about it?
happening?
I like that intro every time. It's good
Yeah.
stuff, man.
It's a good one.
Oh, yeah. What's happening?
I'm here.
Yeah. Mr.
You
Burns.
guys feeling wore out or whipped yet?
Yeah.
More out
Yeah.
from my job.
Yeah. I
That's
literally
not bad.
just like woofed down dinner in the last like 5 minutes. So it's just things are getting busy. So it's all right though, you know?
Oh yeah.
So Mr. Burns, what do you got going on? See how
Probably too
I'm
much.
saying Mr. Burns because he is the proud, owner of this puppy now. So he's now Mr. Burns.
Wow. Elevated my status
Yes,
in
your
life
status.
with the
Yes.
acquirement of one German short hair pup. So
Yeah.
he'd been having a lot of fun. I was going to bring him in here, but we just put him. He just had dinner and went out and did his thing, and he's doing good. He's not even really. He's crate training great. He's not howling very much at all in the middle of the night. We usually make sure we let him out at about 10 o'clock, and then he'll want to go out at 11:30. It seems like every night. Then he'll cruise until like 6. So
Oh wow.
works out pretty good.
Wow.
But with 7 kids, you were kind of used to it. It's a certain time thing, and I almost forgot, what it was like with all the kids. With 7, you would say, well, how in the world can you forget what that's like? Well, like anything else, so much time kind of goes by there. But mama is equipped with the feeding mechanisms. I'll say that. So more it was me pretending to stay awake and help with the kids and change diapers and all that. But with the puppy, it's the same thing. We've had several other dogs too, but
You're pretending?
pretending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you get up in the middle of the night, I find myself still doing it where I would pretend like, oh, I'm asleep. I can't hear anything. The dog's doing his thing, and then somebody else will get up and take care of him. But I'll get up with them earlier in the morning and get them out there. But
7 kids. I mean, I would just say, okay, you're Monday, you're Tuesday, you're Wednesday.
It's all fun and games until everyone's asleep, and nobody wants to get up from sleeping well.
Yeah.
To take the puppy out. But we've got it figured out. He's doing good. I'm gonna, as soon as I can get some time, I'm gonna take him out in the field and run him and get him on some tracks and some scent and just watch the puppy do its thing. So, but anyways, I could talk all night about that dog. Old Fritz is doing good. How about you? How's your new pup doing, Brian?
He's close to being trained, potty trained. He does good. It's like he'll do really good for a day or two, and then he'll have an accident. And it's like, but I think with him, I think it's more of like that puppy excitement. He just is going crazy playing. He's like, I think he's 18 weeks old now, so he's just in full puppy energy. And yeah, he's crazy. But I mean, he does good. He sleeps. Last night, I think he was asleep because he had played so hard during the day. He was asleep at probably 9:30 and slept until 8 o'clock this morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah,
I could sleep that long.
It's a perfect dog.
Bruce, you're about due for a pup, aren't you?
I've got the Veromite here.
That's all you need. Potty trained, friendly.
Mainly just a piece of plastic, so it really requires no maintenance whatsoever.
I
never did
right there.
I never did name it. I never did name it. I've got to still do that. I keep forgetting. So
I gotta attach mine like right there. That way it's staring at everybody.
Listen, we had a dog and we loved our dog, but it's a lot easier without a dog. And who knows in the future.
Where'd you guys go? I thought we were going to have a moment there. I mean, if this StreamTeam beekeeping chat couldn't get any weirder, I mean, I just thought we just sit here and
that is kind of strange.
All right. Have you guys everyone listen in tonight? Sorry about your luck. We're just goofy and wore out and slap happy at this point. But I gotta let's get weird. Have you seen I'm not even sure what they're called. You guys ready to get weird? Let's get weird.
Yeah.
If this is too weird, for the folks tuning in, just make sure they blame Bruce for this. He started it.
Right.
Have you seen? I'm trying to think where I even see it at. They come through reels. It's on TikToks, right? But you'll see these ladies with like really long eyelashes and they're sparkly, right? And all this weird, like,
what?
I don't know, voodoo background type stuff, right? And they got these long fingernails and they have a microphone like this. And they take stuff and they do this.
I have not seen
what.
They make like scratching sounds on things or like crispy, crackly sounds. Like, and they'll just. Thank you.
Oh, what do they call? That's a name for that.
Like
Like
super chat.
There's a name for that. I can't remember what that's called.
I haven't seen that.
ASMR is where they try to. It's like a soothing type.
What's
They
that
make all
stand
kinds
for?
of noises. I don't know, but it's very interesting. They have millions and millions of views. Supposedly, it's like some soothing thing. They make all kinds of noises. I have seen that. It's pretty wild.
I don't
understand that. We try. It's like we try to put ourselves out there, and we're vulnerable, and we try to share what we're doing with our businesses and with our bees and our apiaries, right? And we put our videos out there, and it gets crickets. And then some lady in a purple wig and long eyelashes just sits on a microphone and just taps with long nails like this, and is making thousands of dollars a night. I'm thinking, what are we doing wrong? Probably.
I plan on, when I come to the learning yard this year, having a purple wig and long nails like that. So
autonomous sensory meridian response.
Well, and I got to believe that because that's Chuck Norris. So whatever Chuck Norris says.
ASMR itself wasn't weird enough. The definition of what it does is even weirder.
Wow. That's unreal.
To me, it's like listening to someone scratching on a chalkboard.
Yeah, that's really strange.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it except for look at everyone tonight, or they're on point. They know.
Yeah.
They know what these things are. They are way smarter than us.
Crazy. Somebody right out of the gate had a question for us.
JC Apiary says, I acquired some hives that had honey in them. Apparently mice got in and ran bees out. Should I put supers on my hives and let my bees restore it in my hives? No idea what was in the hives before. So is the question whether to put supers that have honey in them but some mice damage, whether to put that on some existing colonies? Is that the question?
I think so.
Yeah.
What do you say, Brian?
Me personally, not unless I personally know the person, know how the hives were treated, and know more of their history, I would not put any equipment on my existing colonies. But that's just me. I'm just paranoid because I don't want to introduce any diseases or, I don't know if they were around,
did you hear
any fields that were sprayed. I don't know anything about it. So if you know the person, and if it was a buddy of mine, like let's say Greg was like, hey, do you want to take these up your place? Sure. I would just throw them on.
That still sounds sketchy. Hey, Brian, all my bees died. Here, you want some frames and some supers and some boxes? Still sounds a little sketchy.
Yeah. But
Bruce, what do you think, Bruce?
Well, I haven't, excuse me, I haven't knowingly had mice in my hives before, if so, very minimal. And so, I am not quite as, the word's not careful. I have bought used equipment before and I've put it on my hives, but it usually is people that I trust that I would do that with and that I know, or, I just feel good about. But, I don't know what kind of damage. I know mice can totally destroy a hive, but I don't know how nasty that is, if there's really an issue with that. I'm not sure. But I have reutilized primarily boxes. Frames is maybe a different story. Like I say, if it's someone I really know and trust, it's one thing. But if they're in really bad shape, if I don't feel good about them, I won't put them on there. And here in Alabama, we have a comb law anyway. So if you bring it from out of state, you really can't bring comb in and use it anyway. But as far as it's just one of those things, it's a case by case basis. I'd have to be pretty confident that it's okay. I think the boxes would probably be okay, in my opinion. You could probably figure out a way to clean them up really good and reutilize the boxes, but I'd be a little careful about the frames. What do you think,
guys
Greg?
have a American foul brood test kit?
I do not.
I do not.
I don't know that I've ever seen American foul brood in my hives. I've never seen it in person. I want to knock on some wood here because I don't want to see it, but I don't think that I've ever seen American foul brood. I've seen pictures of it, videos of it. I've heard it's just nasty, but fortunately, I don't think it's a huge problem here in this area, at least not right now. I'm going to knock on wood again because I don't want it to become a problem, but I think we're in pretty good shape here right now in that respect.
What do you think? It's a good question, and thanks for it, because we had no idea what we were going to talk about tonight. So now, guess what we can talk about?
Exactly.
The risk of used equipment. Is there one? If there is, how do you know, and how do you mitigate it?
Yeah.
What do you think, Greg, about that question?
Well, I've never really been in a position where I needed to buy or acquire a bunch of used equipment. When I've bought equipment, it had bees in it, and so they were living and they were thriving, and that's kind of a different thing altogether. But what's the difference if you buy sick bees and you don't know it at first, or you buy someone's dead out? You know, there's probably some risk. There's probably going to be somebody who is very straight laced and by the book. They say never ever do that. I've probably even said that at some point, but when I'm trying to think about what the risk, what are you pointing at there?
Pointing at Brian. That's what Brian said. He wouldn't do it.
Brian,
He's straight laced and by the book. That guy.
I bought a lot of used 4-way pallets, and I've had no problems with that. I bought some really nasty old junky ones for like $5, just to get me started. I think the biggest risk, and I'm gonna speak out of turn here, and so if I'm dead wrong, those will be comments that Brian will see on his channel in this video. But to me, the biggest risk, there's two things that I can think of, two issues to think about on used equipment. Number one would be some kind of a disease that can't be cleaned or removed from the equipment. And the only one that I can really think that comes to mind would be American foul brood. And I think that would be within spores that would then be within the wood itself. It could be on the wood frames. But then I've also heard a lot of people say that that's nonsense. That's not how it works. If you buy the book, that's what you always hear, is that you don't want used equipment because of American foul brood. That being said, I think I would be more worried about unknown synergies of things that are collected in the wax. I think would be a little bit more frightening for me, is if you get something that possibly had a fungicide or something else that's collecting in that wax, and you bring it back and you decide to treat with amitraz or something else, and you've got some really terrible reactions going on. The bees are starting to go downhill and you can't figure out why. You're not seeing mites, but the bees are dwindling. They're not behaving correctly. They look sick and they just start going downhill. You're looking around and like you nothing else seems off other than they're just not with the program. To me, I think that's would possibly be a synergistic thing. How do you know that? I don't know. If you knew who you were getting the equipment from, and the trouble is let's say it was a friend or someone in your local area, and you had a good line of communication, and you could say, hey, thanks for the opportunity. The price is right. How'd your bees die? I mean, 90% of the beekeepers out there are going to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was too cold of a winter, or they starved, or this or that. They may not know exactly what it was. If it was just mites and viral loads from mites, I would have no problem taking the equipment. But if it was something like foul brood, American foul brood, or even if it was chalk brood, and you have some fungal imbalances, within the equipment. Maybe that's something else to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ed, son of one, has a good. I've done this in the past. I haven't done it recently, but he says he torches his new materials. You can just take a blowtorch, like a torch, and quickly run it over the stuff, and it'll, especially like the hive bodies, it'll kind of help seal or kill anything in there. But I just think if you're in doubt, like with frames, particularly, just get rid of it. I mean, you can buy new frames. Don't if you're worried about it, just get rid of them. Get new frames. I would say too, though, that I don't know. I've never really had issues with mice. Have you guys? Is there any issue with throwing frames back in that have had mice exposure?
If there's
mouse
too much
exposure?
urine or feces on
See,
there,
that's what
I have
I'm
seen
talking about.
bees where they will like you make a split, right? And I'm grabbing equipment that's been out in the yard all year, and it has mouse damage, and it smells like urine, or there might be even mouse poop on it.
Sure.
I've try to shake it off, and the bees will clean it up, so I'll just stick it out there and see what happens. Sometimes I'll have splits that won't stick in that kind of equipment. If you put it on something really, really strong, then it seems like they'll kind of get it cleaned up. But
it's just
one thing that an old trick that I heard old timers would do though is anything that did have mouse damage or mouse urine, they would just cut a branch off a peach tree and rub the peach tree leaves, the fresh spring peach tree leaves, inside of that box, inside of that colony. And there's that scent, I guess, is very strong. I guess there's something about it that bees pick up on, and maybe offsets that smell. I guess a lot of folks also find that they find a lot of swarms on peach branches. So I think there might be something to it. But the question really becomes is if you have spores, how far are they embedded inside of that wood? If you're torching it, how much heat are you getting? How deep into the box is the spores? Unless you're creating a char that you're scraping off, maybe it's not. The thing to think about though, American foul brood is, I'm going to get in trouble, but this is Brian's channel, so that's okay. And I'm feeling frisky tonight, Brian.
Here's a disclaimer for everybody. Greg has full reign to just go wild.
I'm feeling slap happy. If you look, my face looks sunburned. It's windburned from being out on the roof all day, getting the metal finished up. The thing to think about is, man, I'm going to back up because I'm going to say something stupid. It seems as though in a lot of areas, state inspections are justified in saying that your colonies need to be state inspected so that we eliminate or mitigate the risk of spreading American foul brood. Where this becomes very tricky is when there is a less than 3% chance or 5% chance of that even happening or occurring. It gets into this whole thing is what's good for the goose, good for the gander. If it's good for one, is it good for all to comply and do all those things? If they talk about, I know a lot of inspectors, and there are a lot of great inspectors, but there's also a lot of not great inspectors out there. Some of the inspectors aren't actually going through colonies, or they're visually saying, "Oh, I don't see mites, you're clear," and then signing off on clear bill of health where they see no mites, they see no this. They're not actually washing or going through every colony and find that out. There are some that are doing that, and they're doing a great job. But if the state inspection, if that's justified by spreading a very serious disease, I mean, in Ohio, it's not really an issue. In most states, I don't know that it is an issue either. Bruce, I know Brian, you're in the same state, but Bruce, is American foul brood really a thing in your state?
I've never seen it myself, and I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think the state inspector said he's seen just a couple of cases of it, maybe ever. It's just not common at all. It's not common at all. So I do believe that it's not that much of an issue here. I guess it's possible that it is out there. I'm sure it is, but it's not very, I've never seen it myself. I'm pretty sure. Jason had a great question there, Brian, about the mold.
The only thing like this, so the question here for those that are maybe driving down the road and you're just listening, When you have a dead out with dead brood, small mold patch, do you scrape it all off or reuse it, or let the bees clean it? Greg, what do you do?
I waste no time cleaning up mold or mildew or that kind of stuff. Even if I have frames that have webbing from wax moth, and I spend no time, zero time cleaning anything. I spend zero time torching anything. It's just been my experience that the bees don't care. And it seems like it's way less work for them to clean that off and to reuse the structure than it is to start from fresh. Sometimes you'll hear, we were talking about ASMR earlier, whatever that really means. But have you guys ever heard if you put some dirty frames in a box, or sometimes if you just put them in? I can remember when we were rough cutting our own lumber to make boxes, and there was sawdust, and they had kind of a coarser texture. You could actually hear it sounded like Rice Krispies on the outside of the box. You could actually hear it, and those bees are on the inside
Chewing
just
it.
scraping and cleaning and doing. It's so cool. And so if we put in like, dead out comb that has mold or mildew, they just you hear that they're just going to town scrubbing things up. So I don't clean any of it up.
I think they like to work.
Yeah.
They like to do that. So I would say the same thing. Last year I had a fair amount of my honey supers. I left them out for the bees to clean up, and it rained, and they were outside in the rain, and so they were pretty wet. So I tried to bump all the water out of them I could. I had to get them stored. In July and August here, it just rains quite a bit, and so you never know when you're going to have a big downpour. So the best thing to do is to get them out of the rain and get them stored. And I had to do it. I didn't have a choice. I don't have a lot of time to do this kind of thing, and I hate that kind of stuff, but I banged all the water out of the frames I could. It was they were stacked, I think, 4 or 5 deep in my trailer. It was just the top layer that had water kind of in the comb mostly. So I banged the frames on the side and tapped the water out, went ahead and stored them, and got them stored for the entire winter. I've started pulling them down, and there is some mold in them. But my experience with that is literally within just a short period of time, those bees get up there and they clean it up, and you can't even hardly tell. So it is true. And with the brood in there, the bees just clean it out, man. I wouldn't hesitate at all to put that on there. I think within a short period of time, you won't even be able to tell which frames those were when you put them back in there. So that's been my experience as well. Greg, I do have a question with you though about wax moth damage. Say you have a frame that the wax moths have completely just webbed out and just destroyed. Do you notice, will the bees build that back, or do you feel like you have to rewax those frames? If the comb is totally gone, it's totally clean from the wax moths, and there's a little bit of that webbing that's on them. What have you noticed?
If it's just the webbing, I throw it in there. The bees clean it up. If there's too much damage, one thing, the way I look at a lot of those things is if I'm looking at that comb and I say, if I put that in the box, will the bees clean it up and make it right? And I would be proud to sell that in a nuke. If the answer is no, I'm not wasting time putting it into any of my colonies, because there's a 90% chance that anything from any box could end up in a nuke. So for that reason, I don't do that. If it's on wax foundation, that's a horse of a different color. That's just, I've got very little. I probably have less than 1,000 sheets of wax out there, even if I do. And after we let the rest of the nukes go this year, I won't probably have any wax. It's all going to be plastic. And so my oldest foundation is going on maybe 3 years at the very oldest. So it's still fresh, good looking stuff. So I haven't really had that issue. If it's on, I have had like on dead outs, and or just too small of a colony, and I put fresh foundation and they start a little bit and the wax moths go in there. What's nice is if you're using something like Premier foundation or a plastic, what I will do is just take my Hive tool and just scrape all that right down to the plastic. A lot of times last year, I just threw it right back in the box and they would draw it out. On some of them, if it was just too dank and I scraped too much off and they wouldn't draw it, you could just rub a little beeswax on it, or you could do the melt and foam roll thing just to put a thin layer on top of there. But I think that's where plastic shines, because when you do get any kind of serious damage, it's zero problems. You go right back down to the plastic and a little quick coat, put it back in, you're good to go. You're not wasting any
Yeah.
Um,
That's all I
any
ever do. I don't mess
Yeah.
with it. I'll give it a couple taps, just if there's any real loose bees, shake those off, and that's it. I don't
Okay.
I don't do anything really
It's great.
else.
It's a great
Thomas
question.
had a good point earlier, and before I forget to bring it up, Thomas DeGan, Free Range Art Farm. Check out his channel about wax dipping. Yeah, wax dipping. That is one of the benefits with wax dipping is when you are encapsulating the fiber structure of the wood itself. There's no opportunities for it to bring in spores and then pull it through the cell structure. If you have anything, it's going to be on the outside. And the thing about spores is they need that place. They need that organic matter and material to do their thing. So wax dipping, it's been argued by a lot of folks, is a tremendous opportunity to kind of alleviate completely any kind of issues with spores because there's just no opportunity for the spores to habitate. Habitate? I'm not sure that's a word, but to get into the wood.
Inhabit, yeah.
Inhabit. Yeah, there you go. But,
Inhabitate.
Inhabitative opportunities. But yeah, I don't. What about you guys? I'll be the first one to say that I had several colonies that I was going through, and I go to crack it through, and the bees are and they're fine, and I'm checking in on stuff, and I look over, I'm thinking, well, that's weird. What are those goofballs do? Why are the bees building a nest over on the outside corner of the box? And then I look and pull a frame, and there's this little mouse looking up at me, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to say things like this on here, but against Brian's channel, so I'm feeling frisky.
Right. Well,
but
you know what, though? That's almost like when we were down at the BBQ in Maryland at Jason's last year, and he opened up that whatever was it, a long
horizontal
lang or horizontal or whatever you want to call
prototype,
and there was a nice little mom and her baby sitting there.
She had babies.
Yes.
I will say we dropped the guillotine on the mice that are in the colonies. Especially when they're on 4-way pallets and they're on the ground. Yeah, that was one of those things where a hive tool can be a most excellent guillotine. But I just because they can cause you some trouble. They can get in there and they definitely have some chew damage. Now it won't be too much longer, and probably the bees as they warm up and brood up, probably start running those mice out there. But they've been living in there that long, so I thought, well, but I don't know. Maybe that's cruel. Maybe it's not. I do know they could cause an enormous amount of damage, and every year, if it's 20 frames that they do that to, at the price of frames, that gets to be pretty significant. But it's a great reminder that, Greg, you knucklehead, if there's one thing that you should have did and you can do better this year, and you tell everybody to do it, and you don't do it on all your colonies because you forgot, mouse guards. I mean, come on, it's simple. That would take care of the problem. If the mice want to hang out underneath the colony, along with the voles, and I got something. Maybe have you guys ever seen? Maybe it's a mole or a vole, but I've got this one area in one of the yards where I've got some pallets, and it's like typical Mr. Groundhog thing where the dirt is all raised up and something's burrowing and it's going in and it's going out, but the ground's sinking out underneath of where the 4-way pallet is. It's not as big as what you would think a groundhog would be. Maybe it's something, I don't know. Maybe it would be about the size of
probably a mole.
Mole. Yeah,
moles create about a 3-inch little hump as they go along through the ground.
Okay, maybe it's a mole then.
Keith is onto it. I think we need to, write a consult order.
I was going to say
get in touch with Fred Dunn.
Shrew. Oh man, just when we thought we were safe.
Well,
before I take this conversation any further south, why don't you guys? What do you guys want to talk about?
Oh man, I have no idea. I've been just so busy. I finally started building hive stands.
Yeah, those things look solid, man. You could sell those things, Brian, on your website.
I need like 4 to 6 of them. In all your spare time, why don't you build me 4 and I'll buy them from you. We'll put them in the learning yard.
I thought you said 46.
No, just for the learning yard. 4/6, 4 to 6.
I mean, let me.
Brian, you got your hands full. Don't.
Well,
You
you
got
know
your
what
hands
though?
full.
It's. I filmed. I had a bunch of people ask, "How do you build those hive stands?" Just because, in all of my videos, everybody sees each
Mhm.
hive has its own hive stand, and it was one 2x6x8 board. I made them a little bit larger. That way, it would fit like the Apame bottoms. That way, they would fit everything. And there's an inch on each side. And I made it so that on the sides, there's like a 2.5 inch board that it sits down into,
Oh.
and then so that way they won't shift.
Mhm.
So they're
Mhm.
pretty sturdy. And I mean, I I stood right on the video, when I filmed just, and I kept it very basic. I used hive bodies, instead of getting like a table out, to cut the wood, because I thought, well, not everybody has a table saw, not everybody has this and that. So I literally used a circular saw, hive bodies, cut the wood. It's very easy. I probably could though, Greg, get you a couple of them. I mean, it's not, they're standard cuts. It's easy. I mean, it's when I do the rest of, all the ones that I'm going to do, I am going to get my table saw out just so it's just boom,
Quick.
boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be quick. Um,
Yeah.
so I have 5 more that I have to build for myself. So, and I mean, I'm going to be making more trips up to Home Depot. So, I mean, I can grab a couple boards. It's no problem.
Well, I think it's, there's so many different ways to do it right now. We've got probably I don't even know how many, at least 100 or 100, probably 140 colonies that are on pallets, and I like it because you can move them and it's easy and it's consistent and they're off the ground. But
Mm-hmm.
we took there's maybe another, I don't even know how many, maybe 70 or 80 that we just took the hive stands and then rolled them down flat. So now, and where some of these nukes are, they look a little bit goofy because where they used to be hive stands, we took the bees off and then flipped the stands upside down and then set them on the hive stands. One thing, I don't know, maybe if you guys could maybe comment, if you're still listening this long, leave the comments here below. It seems like something goofy is going with our weather, and we have never seen wind like we have had this year. It has been so incredibly windy, for so long. It's almost mind blowing. It's ever since last summer through the winter, but this spring has just been absolutely horrendous. So when you're making nukes and things like that, you can't. That's way too much of a risk. So we just took the hive stands, which I love because I can cruise through and I can work 100 colonies quick. But I just took them off and flipped the hive stand. So now all those little nukes that we overwintered, they're just, what are they, 8 inches above the ground on those things, and it works. But what I like, the picture you sent, Brian, of the hive stand, what I'd like to do is put 4 of those at the learning yard, because the current setup, long, 12 and
Yeah.
14 foot hive stands made out of 2x12s, from Rough Cut is great when you're working bees by yourself, but when you're trying to bring
Right.
people into the fold
It's
to get people
challenging.
around the colonies, I think it's inhibiting.
Yeah.
And so this year, as the learning yard grows, I want to make sure folks can get around the colonies and kind of see what's going on. So
Yep.
I'd like to get them on some single hive stand kind of
Yeah. I
situations.
could.
So
I tell you what I can do, and I know what you're going to say. You're going to be like, no, 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 don't do that. The 2 hives that I have at the farmer's property, they're basically on cinder blocks. I was going to transfer those over to hive stands this year. I was just uniform across the board. Any of my colonies that I have, they're going to be on those wooden, stands. I could delay making those 2, a week or two, and the 2 that I had for over there, I could just include that in yours. And if you only need what, 4, you say 6 max?
four or so, yeah. But don't, make sure you take care of your bees first, because
See,
I can always
see,
pull a
see.
Bob Benny and just go either just fire up the sawmill and cut some timber, or just go get some landscape timbers and just link and log them, stack them, and put it, make it easy and quick. But
I probably, I'm thinking size wise, I could probably get 4, maybe 5 in my car.
Okay. Well, if you have them and you want to sell them or you want to trade for queens, then great. But don't.
But I don't need to. There's a time out here because I don't need to trade for any queens because I'm not expanding.
Brian 54, I'm here to help. Okay, I'm a bad influence.
I told my wife the other day, just said something about the bees, and I said, queens that I have coming, and she said, "How many queens do you have coming?" And I said, "Oh boy, I'm probably going to get in trouble for even saying this because watch the hashtags. Over the course of the season, I have, Greg, what did I order from you? 10, and then I have
10. You got 10 each week for the next 8 weeks, Brian. I think you ordered 80 queens from me this year.
I got.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to tell everybody that.
I got 10 from you. I got 8 from Jose and 2 from Corey. So I got 20 queens coming. So
Brian's gonna need an outyard. Hashtag closet sideliner.
So, but yeah, no, we'll work out something. I mean, it's fine, So,
well, I don't know what the weather's doing. Spring has been here. Hopefully, you've accepted that. You've accepted the fact that whether you are ready for it or not, spring is here. She's been here for a while. She was here before the calendar said it was officially spring, and she was here before we sprung our clocks forward. But today, when I came home, you know what I seen? We've got, I think, Brian, you got to see it. Let's see, who else is in this chat that might have got to see it? Charlie Vance, is he in here? There's Charlie. Charlie Vance got to see it. Let's see, there might be a couple other folks in this chat. Maybe Jeff Thomas, if you saw the one of the talks that I did at the West Virginia conference, one of those presentations was called Homestead Beekeeping, Making Ends Meet and Creating Abundance. Brian, if you remember in that one, we were talking about early on, we were function stacking fruits and herbs, perennials, growing herbal medicine right in the same bee yard, but we were using one to leverage the other. And in doing so, we had rows that were really close together, and we planted these edible windbreaks in between the rows of bees going up the hill. And so we were creating like a food forest right within the bee yard, and it was beautiful. Loved it. Well, today, as I'm driving, I'm coming up to the house here. Of course, we don't have bees here like we used to anymore. They're over at the farm. But all of my Nanking cherry bushes are in full bloom, and it is absolutely gorgeous. They have a pinkish, whitish little flower, absolutely gorgeous. They make a nice little tart sour cherry. They're a real neat bush. But the forsythia is on its way out. We have dandelions springing up everywhere, and my Nanking cherries are blooming, and the pear trees just a hair south of here are just in full bloom. So spring has been here. So hopefully everyone is getting ready, and you don't get caught off guard, because it will be here, and it won't be a matter of time. We're going to be talking about grafting and cells and doing this and doing that. It's literally just around the corner. So I'm pretty excited about
say that, and I doubt that you got any down at your place. And Bruce, I know Bruce is probably going to book his plane ticket to Cleveland. That way he could see it. But we actually had flurries at my place not an hour ago.
Wow.
Cold front came through and flurries hit. And I'm just like, you kidding me? So
just keep it up there. Keep it up there.
It's the end
Come
of
on,
March.
Bruce. Come up here and see it. But you guys come see it in person.
I lived in Utah for 4.5 years. I know a little bit about snow, and I had enough of it.
Yeah.
Not that I couldn't do it again, but I'm good for now. Staying. And we had the weather's been weird down here too. It's been
Mhm.
kind of crazy. So
Yeah.
it's just strange. Everything's been weird this year with just everything's been strange.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a new beekeeper here.
We do.
New beekeeper here who just caught first swarm. Congratulations on that.
Wow.
I have them on 1.5 to 1 syrup. Should I give them a pollen patty? Bruce.
Great question. Bruce, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
Well, it depends kind of on where you are and what's going on around you. I personally rarely use pollen patties. The bees rarely eat them down here where I'm at. We have pollen coming in most of the year. And so, personally, I would not typically. I think it's a good idea to feed them. But if you got a flow going on, in my opinion, they'll probably do okay without that. But that's just how I do it. I usually, if I catch a swarm, I kind of let them do their thing, unless we're just in a complete dearth, and then I'll try and feed them a little something. I don't really baby swarms along too much when I catch them. I pretty much just kind of let them do their thing and maybe throw a little feed. I usually don't even do that. I just like kind of let them grow, and I figure if they're strong enough to survive, then that's good. If they fizzle out, then that's good too. And I've had pretty good success doing that. I have had some that I catch that just fizzle out, and then some that just blow up and become really good bees. And so it's kind of that's kind of my perspective on it. Now, if you're a brand new beekeeper, if it's your very first hive, you can baby them and do whatever you want. But with the number of colonies I have, I just don't. It's not really worth it to really baby them. I found that the swarms that survive and do well, they've become, like I say, once again, some of my best colonies. But I don't baby them. I'm kind of past. I don't actively try to catch a lot of swarms now. If I walk out to the bee yard or in my backyard here and I've got a swarm hanging in a bush, I'll stick it in a box and keep it, or I'll set up a swarm trap lots of times around my bee yards just in case I catch a swarm coming through. But I don't actively go out and try to catch a lot of new swarms and swarm traps and so forth. I don't do a ton of that. Oh, it says they're in Bama just up the road from me. Well, I would just probably let them do their thing. I actually caught a swarm in my backyard probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was just about a frame and a half of bees, maybe 2 frames of bees. It came out, Greg, I think it came out of that colony that we did the removal from the double hive, the double nick last year. I think it came out of there because it's got a yellow dot on it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The queen in that box doesn't have yellow dot anymore. So I think that's where it came from. And I've just stuck them in a nuke over there in the corner of the yard, and they're still just plugging along. I haven't even looked in them in a few days, so I'm not sure how they're doing, but they look just perfectly fine when I looked in on them a few days ago. So I just kind of leave them alone is what I would do, Bill. But you have to do what's best for you. That's kind of what my opinion is on it.
Like, let me see
what do you
here.
think, Brian?
Well, so I would, like it says right here, Woodland had a perfect the ending. Just watch for small hive beetles.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would not, like, whenever I mess with pollen patties anymore, I put small pieces on and I just keep an eye on it just to make sure that they're consuming it. If they don't consume it, I know down south you all have like 10 times the small hive beetle problems than we do up here. And what'll happen if the bees aren't taking it, the small hive beetles are, and you'll just create yourself an issue. So just watch with that. That's all.
Can I just comment on what Joey Rawls said here? He loves catching, or somebody who said that? Oh, Jeff, or I'm sorry, a free range art farm.
Thomas.
Thomas said that. I'm sorry. In my mind, I watched a video from Joseph Rawls today where he caught a swarm over in Louisiana. Man, there is nothing, Thomas. There's nothing more exciting, I think, than catching a swarm. Either way, it's really cool in a trap and it's really cool hanging in a tree. So there's nothing at all wrong with that. I've caught a lot of them. I don't know. There's no telling how many over the years, but I've just kind of, I don't have a lot of time to do that so much and to prepare for that. And I'm trying to do more splits and kind of get a little more intentional about my genetics now. So I'm not opposed to catching them. I think it's a great idea for those who want to, but I do a little bit of it, but I just don't do it at the level I used to. I used to set traps up kind of in several different places and really try to actively catch. That's how I grew a lot of my original bee yards in my apiary originally. But I've kind of backed off on it just a little bit. A lot of it's just because of time, the time factor, a lot of it is. But anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. There was a question here about when you catch a swarm, how soon do you rehive that swarm? I think that's actually a really good question. And so I've caught a lot. I know you guys, maybe you could chime in here too, whatever you think. But what I typically do, especially if I have a swarm trap that is in a place where I don't check it like every day, if it's I check it maybe once a week. If I go by there
Yeah.
and there's a swarm in the trap, I don't have any idea when that swarm moved in. It may have moved in that same day, or it may have moved in the day after I checked it the previous time. And so I usually let them hang there a little while, and I'll explain why. If I pull the swarm down and I look in there and I see the queen and that she's laying, then it's fine. You've got a mated queen. That's no problem. But I think the risk you run if you pull that thing down immediately and you don't know how long they've been in there, if that hive happens to have a virgin queen in there and she's not mated yet, what if she's just flown on and maybe she's just either away or she's in the process again. Maybe she left for one day and hasn't completed her mating flights. You move her. This is my theory. I might be wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But if we move that swarm over to my bee yard and rehive it, but she flies out of that swarm trap the next day and she's lost and maybe doesn't come back, that's the risk you run. So what I usually do, if I find a swarm up there in the tree, if I have the time, I'll pull it down sometimes and I'll look for that queen. If she's laying, I take it. If I'm not sure, if I don't have time to take it out, I'll leave it up there another week or two, make sure she's mated good. And then I feel like if I leave it up there a couple of weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks, she'll be mated in there. And then I take it and I'll usually let it sit there in the new location, just maybe overnight, just for a little time. You don't have to, but I usually do let them get reoriented. And then I rehive it in the spot where I move the swarm trap to. And then I take the swarm trap back out and you can hang it up again, or, you can just replace that swarm trap with another one when you take it down. And lots of times they'll catch multiple swarms in the same spot, I found over the years. But that's kind of my philosophy and theory on that. I think you run a risk if you haven't checked it in several days, you just go ahead and take it right then. I do think that's a risk. And most of the time you'll probably be okay doing that, but that's just kind of my theory on it. I don't like to remove it. Now, if you're driving an hour to get to that swarm trap, it's a little different story. I definitely pull it off. I don't know. I know there's different theories on that, but that's what I do.
What's the price of those freebies? That's the correct. What is the price? What do those bees cost you? If you look at it that way, or what do you have to gain from it? I think everyone's got a completely different reason and approach. Like Bruce said, I think it's a lot of fun. That would be the only reason that you'd see me fooling with swarms, is just because it's fun. We used to do it. I used to do a lot of dumb. Well, I don't. Not that catching swarms are dumb, but I've done a lot of things that I look back and I'm thinking, you knucklehead, how much time did you spend chasing these colonies, or chasing this or chasing that? I mean, we used to do dumb stuff like relocate bee trees and bring them back to the farm and dig holes and put the trees back in the ground. And it was fun because we got to enjoy them and look and learn and watch. But one of the greatest things that I learned is that just because there are bees in a tree does not mean that they are, number one, healthy. And they are definitely not the epitome of what we thought the pristine, prestigious, wild, feral bees in a tree. What, in my mind, I used to think that was a certain thing. But it wasn't until I actually started relocating those and getting in there and actually looking and finding out and seeing what happened. But when you bring a bee tree home and then they do nothing but swarm and swarm and swarm, like, okay, why is that? Why are they, or why do they abscond? And then you look in the bottom of this tree log and there's a 5-gallon bucket worth of small hive beetles in the bottom of it. The same things that are plaguing our bees in a box are the same things that are plaguing the bees in those trees. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're superior. But for me, it kind of got to be, it was I don't want to say it was a biohazard, but when we started trying to control, there's a better word for that when it comes to a farm and bringing animals in and out. But you have to create some procedures where if you are bringing in different let's say a group of pigs or a group of cows or anything else under your farm, you don't just take those and put them right in with your herd. You usually quarantine, you watch, you look, you make sure everything's okay first before you start integrating onto the same pastures or doing things like that. When we started looking at bees the same way too, it kind of gave me a little bit different of approach on what I was willing to risk to bring those genetics in, or disease in. On a swarm, I mean, you could argue, you're going to mitigate any potential, maybe foul brood spores or chalk brood issues or things like that. Of course, you probably wouldn't have that. You could still definitely have bees that are sick with viruses. But for me, when we started tuning in and dialing in the genetics that we ran, to me, that's where it got really important to keep the swarms out. The only time that you'll probably ever see me fooling with swarms anymore is if I'm smart enough to put swarm traps in our own out yards just to catch our own bees in case they swarm. But truth be told, I decided I made a to use Bruce's word, intentional decision to be more intentional with my beekeeping to keep my bees in their boxes and not have them land in the trees. And so rather than spending the time making or hanging or checking or quarantining swarms, I thought, well, I'm just going to put this time into making more bees. And then I found I was actually able to keep way healthier numbers and keep those bees in the box. And then I had time, if I wanted to take a risk, great, I'll go make some lean splits, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. But it helped me to grow the apiary by spending more time working the bees that I had and tuning up those genetics, and it reduced the risk of bringing everything in. We have, feral colonies in stock. That is a part of our story. We did a lot of that, and there's probably a percentage. It's probably less than 1%. Genetic line that's in our current makeup, but for every 10 swarms that we caught, there might have been 1 out of 10 that were standouts. The other 9 out of 10, they could abscond. Were just had a weird swarmy tendency. They weren't quite right. We couldn't get them to stick. All the different things. So I don't want to dissuade folks from doing that, but I want to encourage you to think about, if you are trying to catch swarms because you think they're freebies, spend some time evaluating what the cost of those bees are, and either a time or any risk on bringing unknown genetics into a yard. You could be catching your neighbor's unmanaged colony. You could be catching your neighbor's unmanaged beautiful genetics too. So you could win, but I think there is some risk there too.
I will say too, one thing to think about when you catch swarms. Excuse me, I had to cough a second or clear my throat. But when you catch swarms, one thing that a lot of people I think get concerned about, and one thing I've noticed over the years is when you catch a swarm, whether it be in a swarm trap or hanging in a tree, many times those bees will requeen very quickly. Like if it's especially if it's an original prime swarm, the reason they're swarming many times is because that queen is getting older, and it's just the bee's natural way to kind of split and get new genetics in the original colony. So what I found is with a lot of the swarms I've caught is a lot of them will blow up, but many times they'll replace that original queen within a month or two. And it's almost like they don't skip a beat. They just kind of take care of it. And sometimes they crash, but I've almost had better success when a colony swarms and replaces that queen and supersedes her pretty quick. It doesn't mean she was a bad queen, but you just have to know, bee biology states that if it is a good, strong colony she swarms from, that she's been the head of for a year and a half, 2 years, she's going to be replaced. And so don't freak out or worry about that. So if you start to see supersedure cells in that colony soon after they get established, I just let them do their thing, because especially if they built up quickly after they swarm, they're probably going to be, in my opinion, pretty good bees. The other thing is if I catch a swarm that's got 6 virgin queens in it, I can't stand those kind of swarms, because many times they're tiny. They might be the size of a softball. And to me, those are the colonies that we're going to swarm. They might have, to me, I may be wrong on this, but it seems like they're more swarmy genetics. And in the future, you may end up with some issues. And many times they just don't make it. It's just a difficult thing. And so I can't stand those kind of swarms. And so those are a couple things to think about. Just if you catch a swarm, if they replace the queen, don't worry about it, because it's probably time. Just be patient with them and let them do their thing. And if they fizzle out, then it probably wasn't a hive you want anyway. And also watch their genetics, watch their attitude, make sure they're doing the things you want. If they aren't, you need to probably requeen them. Just take care of that. Because people know the reputation of my bees, and part of the reason they are that way is because much of my stock originally was from feral bees here local. And these bees around here, the feral bees, I believe, are a little bit spicy. It's just how they are. Now they're rugged and they're tough and they make a lot of honey. but they are a little bit spicy. And so over time, the last couple of years, Greg, there's that word intentional, being more intentional with what I'm doing. This year my bees are probably on average more gentle than they've ever been, that I can ever remember them being. And part of it is because, I've tried really hard the last couple of years to kind of work on that and to work on the genetics. I still have a few that are a little bit above where I want them to be, or a lot above where I want to be, but most of them are getting better. I've been able to work them with a veil a lot of times and not have to really suit up a lot of times. And this time of the year, usually they're pretty crazy because we have these weird dearths and the weather's crazy, but they've been much more workable this year. And so that's kind of something I wanted to kind of reiterate about the swarms. All right, there's a question for us.
There's a question here that I'm going to direct to Mr. Burns.
That's
long?
Nell NKY Honeybee's question is, how long should I wait to hit Osalic after installing a new package? I'm a big fan, and I recommend that folks think about 10 days from the time you install the package to go ahead and hit them with oxalic acid. I don't know, some folks maybe do it right away. In my mind, what I don't want to do is interrupt that 3 to 5 day window when they are getting used to mama, they're letting her out, and she's coming into her fullness in the colony. I don't like to interrupt that. But what I would highly recommend is that the package gets treated with oxalic acid before they're sealed brood. If you do that, you're pretty much going to ensure that you are 99.9% mite free. And then if you come back 4 days later and hit them one more time, you're going to have a really clean package. Can you have bees that are in a package that have mites? You sure can, just like you can in a swarm. A package really is not a lot different from a swarm in the fact that it's bulk bees in a container that they're starting from scratch. The why bees swarm and why bees get put into a package, of course, is wildly different. But the same things, how you would treat a swarm, I would treat a package too. And both can be fantastic. Swarms can be, I'm sure a lot of folks use them to grow and they use them as bulk bees. We can talk about the risk all night long, but the fact of the matter is a lot of folks love swarms, and I want to encourage folks to do that. But I just want to encourage you to also think about what it is you're doing. Does that make sense for your goals? Just like a package, is a package better? Is a nuke better? I think we've talked about that before, fellas, on one of the StreamTeam live chats. I think it's over on our channel. We're kind of, tear into that a little bit. There is no silver bullet. There is no one way or right way. There is a lot of different ways to do all these things. But the thing is just spending some time to think about, what do I want out of this? What are my goals? And then which one of these tools better fit what I'm trying to do?
Hey, Greg, there's a question up here that I think would be great. You and I talked a little bit last night about different ways to kind of make queens and things like that, different types of splits. We just talked privately. Jeff Thomas had a question on here. Brian, could you pull that up? I think it's a great question, and because we talked about some of these exact issues last night.
How far?
It was up above. I've got it. It was at 7:54 p.m.
7:54. Oh,
8:54. I'm sorry, 8:54 your time. 8:54 your time. Yeah.
Hey, while I'm looking for that, I want to thank everybody there for the super chats, and there we go, and also Jason and Lisa, new members.
Wow,
that's great. That's awesome.
Welcome to the Cool Kids Club here at Castle Hives.
Castle Hives. So the reason I wanted to address this, Greg, I think, and Brian maybe too. A question for all. My colonies are busting at the seams. Not time for me to graft. What about doing walkaway splits? And Greg, last night we talked about queen rearing, and we talked about all kinds of splits. We talked about emergency queens, grafted queens, swarm queens, supersede. We talked about all this. I was just asking, kind of brainstorming with you a little bit. So this is my comment, and Greg, tell me what you think about this, and you guys will like your opinion too on this. But it says my colonies are busting at the seams. Not time for me to graft. What about doing walkaway splits? And I guess it all is about context. He says it's not time to graft. What does that mean? Does that mean he's not ready, or does it mean there aren't enough drones? Does it mean the bees aren't ready? In my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, Greg. If the bees are not ready to graft, then they're probably not ready to do walkaway splits either. Would that be accurate? Because it's kind of the same principle either way. You're creating queens, and you got to have the drones available and the resources for them to be successfully mated either way. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't wonder if what he meant to say is he doesn't have time to graft. Because
Okay.
if he's saying they're busting at the seams, then he's probably seeing those early indicators
Okay.
that clue us
Okay.
in that, hey, it's time to start thinking about doing something. You start to see they're getting plugged out, they're getting jammed up. There's drones everywhere. There's drones between boxes, and then we start to see a heavy drone hatch. Then you'll start to see cups
right.
being
Okay.
formed, and maybe the early cups. But let's chase that, because that's valuable information for folks. There's a lot of different ways to do that. There, a lot of us in the northern part of the country have bees that are busting early, and if we base our graft when we start grafting based on incoming fresh forage, I've got at least 120 colonies that I could split today if I wanted to, but I can't graft to really do that until I have enough drone population to mate those queens. Even outside of cool temperatures, it's a little early because I don't know that their nutrition is definitely on point because they're just looking great and they're doing all of those things. But I like an insurance policy. I like a buffer. And while we do use supplements to help as additives for our colonies to help steer them in a direction that we want to go, I'm really, we're almost ready to start grafting. Once the pairs hit up here and they're in full bloom, everything else falls in line right behind that. So then I'll start doing that. But if the question was from Jeff Thomas, it's not time to graft and they're busting, I think it's something to consider. Is you'd have to bring up a southern queen to do that. Um, but it gets to be a little bit tricky, because if we are pretending that the bees aren't going to have that inclination to swarm until we have a flow or enough pollen coming in, then maybe we're jumping the gun thinking that we need to split them right away rather than just letting them build. It's not outlandish and out of the question to think about putting a super on some of these colonies already when we already have dandelions on. If you came out of the winter in double deeps and those colonies have no room to go, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? You're not going to just leave them crowded in double deeps to see what happens until they have cells. What you could very easily do is start pulling out some of those extra resources out of those boxes, give those to some smaller colonies, drop some fresh frames inside of those doubles, let them keep drawing out that comb. Maybe that's enough to get you where you want, or do that and go ahead and add a super and have them start to work on drawing comb. If they are already busting and exploding, they're probably fine to draw some comb too. So there's that. But Bruce,
Greg,
this gets into a whole situation of how do we make queens 18 different ways without grafting. And that's one thing that I want to encourage folks to do, is put down the grafting tools for just a second. Just put them down, like pencils down, just grafting tools down. Let's talk through this. Let's figure out if this is a good move. And I think Bruce and you and I are going to have a pretty in-depth conversation about that coming up. But what are your thoughts on the question, Bruce?
Well, I think you probably hit the nail on the head, but I know we're getting kind of on in the chat here a little bit, but last time you talked about it, kind of an easy solution, I would say, for folks that are in this situation. Now, if Jeff is trying to keep them from swarming, that's one thing. Just maybe add a box, give him some space, maybe checkerboard a little bit. But if he's wanting to make splits, we talked last night. He mentioned walkaway splits. Can you maybe walk people through what you mentioned to me last night about easy way to make splits without having to graft? What you
Easy
did for
queen
years.
rearing with no grafting is something that a lot of folks, I don't know if they're apprehensive, if they've not heard about it, or if they're just excited about grafting. They hear everyone talking about, I'm grafting, I'm making queens, I'm doing all these things. One of the things that I do in a lot of the talks is I'll ask folks to raise your hand. And I did it in West Virginia. Raise your hand if you want to make queens this year. Everyone raise their hand. Okay, hands up. Okay, great. Bruce, come on, put your hand up. There we go. Bruce and Brian, raise your hand if you want to make your own queens this year. Okay. Brian's like, no, I'm done. I'm 18. Okay. And I said, keep your hands up. How many need more? How many could use more than 5 queens a week. A lot of hands still up. Great. Okay. How many could use more than 20 queens a week? Okay. And then how many could use or need more than 50 queens a week? And all of a sudden, boop, all the hands go down. And I say, okay, I want you to think about something with an open mind. What if I told you you could make the absolute best queens without even picking up a grafting tool? And they look at you like, what are you talking about? How can we make any queens by any but with any in any kind of numbers without doing all that? Well, there's something to be said about understanding what it actually takes to successfully have an entire frame. Well, when we're grafting queens, for the most part, there's 45 queens to a frame. Early in the year, we might start with 30 and then eventually get up to 45. And then as we get into later on in the season, we start backing that off again. But think about that. Think about what it takes to get a truly healthy starter allocated and set aside just to make all those queens happen. The time that you're spending in the JZBZ cups, or even if you're making your own wax cups, the frames, the dedicated starter, all those things, making a queenless colony, you're allocating resources to do it. Now, if you don't need those resources for anything at all, and you're okay with risking that and doing that, then great. But there's something to be said about taking your favorite colony that has genetics that you absolutely adore and you want more queens of, and just letting them build and not giving them any kind of room at all, and let them make some of the most beautiful swarm cells that you've ever seen. Now, wait, I know everyone's going to say, well, that's ridiculous, Greg, because every book that we've read and all the videos that we've seen on YouTube say that when bees decide that they want to swarm, there is no turning that bus around. And I'm here to tell you that is not true, because we've made hundreds and hundreds, probably over 1,000 queens over the years doing just that. Before we got into grafting, before I needed 50 or 100 queens a week, that's exactly what I would do. I would take colonies, especially in 5-frame nuke boxes, let them get into 5/5s, and just get them jammed up. Get them to where they had no more room, and let them put those queen cells on. And no matter if it was starter strips, wax foundation, or plastic foundation, I would go to town and I would cut every single cell out and make those splits. Those are look, we sell queens, and I'm really proud of our genetic line. But I'm here to tell you that there is no better queen than the queen that you're making in your yard from your bees, when your bees are doing all the work in the perfect timing with perfect nutrition. Doesn't matter what anybody says. I'm a firm believer of it, and I've seen it for years and years and years. When those bees have the timing down perfectly, and they know exactly which larvae are to be the replacements, and they have all the nutrition in the colony to do so, and they put the time and the energy into that, you're doing nothing. You're letting them do all of the work. And we'll talk about it more with Bruce. I talk about it in my presentations. Let the bees do all the work first. Cut those queen cells out, or move those frames with cells on them, and move those into splits. And you can do it immediately. You don't have to set a cell starter up. You don't have to let the queens go queen. You don't have to let these colonies go queenless for a day. But when you're working with these boxes of bees that are already have that inclination to do it, play to that strength, and you win. And you can create an enormous amount of abundance right in the bee yard by letting the bees do all the work first. The reason why this is really, really important. Yes, grafting is fun and it's rewarding. And to see an entire frame of 45 with beautiful, juicy queen cells, it's an amazing feeling. But you know what's more amazing than that is when you crack open a hive and you see a queen cell and you see that trap door go boop, and here you see mama, she comes out and she crawls up the cell and she sees all of the bees greeting her and inviting her into this colony, and they're doing their thing. And now you just witnessed that queen birthing into that colony. That's the most beautiful thing in the world. What most folks do is they get so on fire for grafting because they hear it. They think it's a measure of something. Maybe it's a feather in a cap. Maybe they just want to learn and they're okay to learn the hard way. That's totally cool too. But what a lot of times what happens is it takes there's so many things that have to happen in great detail with great nuance to get it from here's my grafting tool to here's a capped queen cell. There's a lot of things that happen in between there. But when you let the bees do all the work and you cut the cells out, now all you're focused on is the second part of that equation, which is the queen emerging as a virgin, going on a mating flight, coming home, and laying. Once you master that time frame and you get really good at knowing, okay, I'm looking at this queen cell and it kind of looks, I don't know, like a little bit foamy and thin on the bottom tip, and you know that queen, that she's going to hatch within probably 4 to 6 hours. You start to be able to judge your queen cells and know how old they are. Once you get that figured out, then pick up the grafting tool when you need those extra queens, and then learn that first part. But that first part can be so intimidating. There are so many things that go wrong in that first part of the equation that what breaks my heart, and the reason why that I'm so adamant about this, is because folks quit. They say, you know what, queen rearing's too hard. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to buy queens. I'm just going to call Greg and I'm going to order queens. Yeah, we sell queens and that's what we do for a living. But there is no better queen than the one that you're going to make in your yard. And it is so rewarding to be able to do it. That's what I want to encourage folks to do. Let the bees do all the work first. And when you need more than 50 queens a week, let's talk about grafting then.
Hey,
Don't
Greg.
get me going, guys. I'm going to get fired up. I'm going to get in trouble again.
Awesome stuff. And we will talk more about this in the future. But I did have a quick question. You know, just what do you do with the queen that's in that hive when you crowd them? Do you take her out? Or when you see all those queen cells, what do you do? How do you keep her from
what I've always
leaving?
done is when when I'm making, especially early in the early days, when I was making all the nukes or just growing our yard, I would go through and I would just start going through and splitting everything. I would pull a frame of sealed brood and a frame of food and a fresh sheet of foundation out of everything that I could. I'd throw them in a box. I'd drop the queen cell in each box and I'd close them up for 3 days. No matter where they were in the yard, they could be right next door. Totally worked. In the situation where the queen, when they're putting on those swarm cells, how do we turn them around so they don't swarm and leave the box? Well, we remove all of those swarm cells from the equation. We thin that box out some. We take out some food, we take out some brood, and we give them fresh sheets to work with or drawn comb to work with. And with Italian, Carney, and Caucasian influences that we've used for all these years, that turns them around 90% of the time. The only time it doesn't turn them around is when those goofballs put a queen cell up in some weird, goofy place that you just can't quite see up on the side part of a frame. Then that one hatches, and then it's history. But if you think about, you know, one of the I think most powerful things in that presentation that I give, it's a picture of me, and in my hand, there's, I can't even remember how many, 10 or 12 or 15 queen cells.
Yeah, there was a
that
lot.
I just cut out of a colony. Times each one of those by $40. In my hand was $480 some in future queens, right? Of course, they had to get mated and do all that first, but the potential was right there, and I did nothing. The only thing that I did was do nothing, and that is really hard for a lot of folks because you want to be doing something. You feel like you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So in that case, Bruce, we just knock down the queen cells, give them a little bit more room, thin them out a little bit, and then go through all my colonies and make up all my splits to put those in. Another thing that I think, and we're going to talk about it more, Bruce, is one thing I think is really smart to do is in that situation, do just that. But let's say you have a really banging colony and double deeps, 10 frame double deeps, and they are absolutely just jamming, right? Take mama out of the colony. On the frame that she's on, don't even look. There's her, there's a frame, great. Get them a frame of sealed brood and a frame of honey, go put them in a nuke somewhere else in the yard, don't care. Doesn't matter. Put them off to the side and split that double deep to kingdom come. Or take, if you think a walkaway split's a good idea, and I would challenge you that you're wasting time and resources to do that. But if you were dead set on doing it, I think there is an opportunity for a faux walkaway split by doing just that. Take a strong colony, take the queen out, a frame of sealed brood, a frame of food, move her, put her into a nuke, make that entire colony queenless. Now go over to your Pepto Pink queen, or go over to that queen that you really want to make more daughters off of, and just grab a frame that has eggs on it, day-old eggs on it. you could drop it right into that colony. You could also make that split, is what we're doing, out of that double deep colony, move the queen out of the way, give them 3 days, come back in, go through, knock every queen cell down. Now go to your Pepto Pink or your breeder queen or whatever queen you want to see more daughters off of. Now grab eggs from that colony and drop into that double deep and let them make you a bazillion queen cells that are the exact genetics that you want from that queen that you want to see more daughters from. And now you're not losing anything because the colony that you, rather than just doing a walk away split and wasting the time and resources them to see if they're going to create a queen, and then in 16 days have something that's going to hatch, and then another 10 days have something that's mated and laying again. Use that colony as a faux starter, just like that. There are so many ways that you can create such enormous abundance in the bee yard by letting the bees do all the work. And it's hard for a lot of folks because we're control freaks, we're stubborn, we're hard-headed. We want to take the glory for it, but when we let the bees do all the work, man, that's where the magic happens.
Good stuff, man. I think that's a good note to.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. And we'll talk more. We're gonna really break this down, I think, here in the future. But
Oh yeah.
I think right now, at least right here, right now, where I'm at, it's time to do this. I know it's going to obviously move further and further north as time progresses, but I thought it'd be good to address that this evening and let people kind of get the idea. I like you believe that I think it's okay and really cool if you want to graft and learn how to do that. I've tried to play with it a little bit, but I did get frustrated just in all the different parts and pieces to that, the timing and everything. It's just hard for me to do it with my work schedule to just time everything perfectly. But if you can just do what you're talking about, you can just really do things almost on the fly that way. You kind of can, if you see the cells, if you plan for that, you can just break splits out real quickly, even in small mating nukes or even in like a little 2 or 3 frame nukes or whatever you want to do. And then just put those cells in there and just grow your apiary real quickly and simply. And you can also prevent swarming at the same time. So I like it. I love it. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Greg.
Bruce, let's dig into that a little bit further because when you look at bees, what are bees? They are nothing but opportunists. When there's an 100%. Opportunity to collect and gather, that's when they jump and make things happen. So why aren't we doing that too? Yeah, it's okay to plan and to schedule and to do all these things. But if we just look to the bees and look in those colonies and see what they're doing, play to their strengths, let them do everything in their own perfect timing, let's be opportunists there. And I want to talk more about that. I've probably already gotten myself in enough trouble for the night, fellas. It's getting a little bit late for me. So I was thinking about maybe jumping off here. Do you guys have any questions or final thoughts?
I'm good, man. I think we've had some really good conversations tonight.
You know, one, and I don't know whether we answered this. I know someone asked, when is the first date for the learning yard?
First learning yard is going to be April the 15th. We've got the first package pickups are going to be April the 8th. And then the first learning yard is going to be April the 15th. It's going to be every other Saturday following the 15th. And then April is going to be busy. Right now, we are just hot and heavy trying to get things as close to being ready as possible. And it's going to be a continual work in progress in the shop all year. But we're going to be ready to have folks come pick up their packages for 8. And then 4:15 is the first learning yard. And then 4:29 is going to be the second package pickup. And then the following Saturday is going to be learning yard. And then we're getting to May. And then at the end of May and early June is going to be all the nuke pickups. There's queen pickups all through there. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be live action. And Bruce, I wish you were closer because we would just reel you in there all the time, like Brian. It's a lot of fun. Maybe you can make it up this year, Bruce. Special appearance.
We're gonna maybe do that. We're gonna try and put together a date if we can. I can get up there with you, hang out with you. You guys,
StreamTeam live from the learning yard would be cool.
That would be a lot of fun.
That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
You guys have anything? Any last thoughts before we check out for the night?
I would say, and I'll kind of close out. I did a video. One of the funnest things I've done this past about a week ago tomorrow. Local gal here, Kim, just had a long hive, and she had put bees in there. And there was a cold day, a cold snap, where the bees, she was a little concerned about them. And there was one that she sent me, she put a video on Facebook. She was concerned because some of the Facebook groups are just kind of mean and the commenters are just mean and disrespectful. So
Yeah.
she's like, I want to know what's going on with my bees. You know, I've tried reaching out, but people are just whatever. And so I reached out to her. I said, hey, you know, I've got bees. And hey, I set up a time to go meet with her. We went through the colony and I posted that video, and it's one of my favorite videos I've done. She was just so receptive, and there were some issues with it, but she had done a tremendous job. There was a few issues, some things she didn't know about that we address in the video. But I'd encourage you to go check that video out. It's one of my favorite ones that I've made, and I've made over 400 plus videos, and it's one of my favorites. So I think if you watch it, hopefully you'll enjoy it. But she was just a joy to work with, and it was a lot of fun. So go check that out. We got more stuff coming up. Many of you may remember I did a video a few weeks back about I split one hive into 4, and that video is probably the follow is probably going to drop, maybe going to drop tomorrow evening. And so I think it's going to be, it was kind of a fun experience looking in there. I haven't been back down there and really looked in it in a while. So yes, it was a total mystery when I showed up, but it was a good time. I enjoyed checking that thing out. But other than that, we're just going to keep progressing, moving along, and trying out some of these things we talked about tonight. I think, Greg, maybe trying to grow the apiary and just trying to continue to improve my skills and improve my bees, and maybe continue to work towards that goal of a more desirable bee and beekeeping operation.
Awesome. A couple things going on this week is, of course, we're just been busy at the farm, but I've got the first interview from the Honey in the Hills interview series that we're getting ready to
Nice.
to let loose. It's awesome. I'm really looking forward to this series because there are just so many great folks, some of the brightest minds and biggest hearts in beekeeping, from folks that are dedicated to making a positive difference, making an impact in their local community. I'm really looking forward to sharing their stories live from the Honey in the Hills conference. Those will start rolling out here shortly too. The first one ought to come out this week, and then we'll start rolling them out throughout the summer. When we get to later the summer, back into the fall time is likely when we'll dig back into the Hive Life interview series. I think I've got, probably 12 to 15 fantastic interviews from Hive Life to get out. And then I think about 8 from Honey in the Hills, including a panel discussion with Dr. Humberto, Fred Dunn, Paul Kelly, and myself. And boy, it's
a good one.
You don't want to miss that one. It's not only is it funny, but there are some really, really great points and topics in that panel discussion from Honey in the Hills. So we've got all that coming up. We are just about sold out on packages on the 4-8, almost sold out of nukes, and queens. We're going to be sold out until probably the end of July or August, and through there might be some in September, but we're going to be sold out on all those pre-sales. If we have plans on expanding, and I know that we can do it, but we have to make sure we're putting the time that we do have into making sure that every queen, every nuke is top notch. We also are trying to grow the business, which takes an enormous amount of time too. There's something to be said about working on your business and not working in your business. And when you're trying to do both, it's tough. So we're trying to do the best we can to do both, but we might, rather than maybe selling 1,500 queens or 1,000, I might only take the pre-orders till maybe 700 or so. And then if any extra that we can make each week, great, but those will be available at that point in time. Or we'll get with our current customers and see, do they want them a little bit sooner? And if not, we'll stay on the timeline, just a way that we can make sure we're putting out the best quality while also being able to grow the business and all the other ways that it's taken us. So that being said, if you're interested in nukes or queens, time is just about out. I think by the time I get off this live chat and look at the orders, the packages for 4-8 are probably already going to be sold out or close to it. So I want to thank everyone who listens to the Stream Team, and I want to thank everybody for all your support locally and abroad. It means the world to us. There's no way that we could be in this position where we could spend every Wednesday night with you talking about bees, or Sunday nights talking about the farm if we weren't doing that as our primary income. And the way that we are doing that as our primary income and as our full-time job is because of the support on everybody in this community, whether it's wax dip boxes, bucket feeders, queens, or nukes. You guys make it happen. And so I really, really want to just say thanks. We appreciate you guys. And we're looking forward to seeing you all real soon at the Learning Yard at Nature's Image Farm. Brian, what's new for you coming up this week?
Man, I tell you, when Mother Nature wants to cooperate and we have 2 days where it's going to be sunny and in the 50s, I'm going to finish out my hive stands. So that'll be set. This year, I got all like wax dip boxes and everything from you. Frames were already assembled. So I don't have to put anything together to expand other than just build out those hive stands.
Nice.
So that's it. And it's just I need to get out there. This weather's been so nuts up here. I need to get out and just check the pollen, get some pollen patties on. I've got a couple videos though. I like everybody else. It seems like in the beekeeping world, I got a hive set up from Vivor that now I'm not going to go into details about it, but mine actually broke while I was assembling it. So the super where they have the window, literally it's split right in half and you can see through it now. And I'm like, well, I don't want to glue it. I mean, it would basically, that box would not be usable, and they're wax dipped. So it's like, I would not even want to try and glue it, just the integrity of that board. It's done. So I contacted them and told them, I said, hey, I can put this video out as is, but if you want to replace it, then I can just say, hey, they sent me another one and put that one together and hopefully that one doesn't break, so I've got that one. A couple people had been asking about those hive stands that it almost looks like a car can run over them. I do have that filmed. Other than I have my GoPro sitting over on the side. I've been so busy with work and just things around the house that I haven't even pulled the video off the GoPro yet. So it's just getting busy. And now, within the last few days, we ordered quail. So I need to build a quail hutch.
I've got a bird dog. You've got the quail.
Yeah.
Sounds like we've got a good time getting ready to happen, Brian.
Exactly. So we've got 32 quail coming and 30 eggs. We're going to incubate some also. So, and we're expanding the garden. And so it's just, I mean, it's busy, but it'll be okay. So busy is good though. I mean, it keeps you going, keeps you young. So, but I will say, like, in the last probably month or so, I haven't had many videos, but they're going to be rolling here very soon. Just there's a lot going to be going on, and I plan on going through. And those that want to just follow along, and like I'm going to quote the infamous, the famous Mike Berry. What I'll be doing isn't like what you should do. It's not going to be a how-to. It's more just a vlog. Here's how I'm going to, expand out and be this, closet homesteader, closet sideliner. That's awesome. But that's it. I'm just going to go through the whole entire process, and it'll be fun. This spring's going to be definitely a lot of fun. So, but I'm feeling like the stress, like I should be ready by now, but I've got another 3.5 weeks before I think, my first round of queens get here. So I've got time. So, but it's all good. It's all good. So, but yeah, coming soon, we'll have a couple videos. So everybody keep an eye out.
Quality over quantity, Brian. You're doing great.
That is it. Yeah, that is it.
So, it's been fun, fellas. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So, y'all want to close it out?
I think it's time.
Hour and a half. That's it. Let's close it out, y'all. So,
sounds good.
Whose channel are we on next week? Done. Mr. Jenny. All right.
A lot of it depends on whether or not whenever the pollination bees come home. So we'll see how next week looks. I'm not sure, but as of now, the plan is on my channel next Wednesday.
Good deal.
Brian,
Awesome.
can I say one more thing?
What's
I
that?
promise it's the last thing I'll say. It's the time of year where there are a lot of beginning beekeepers who are asking a lot of questions. And although it might be a question that you know the answer to, and it might be the answer you've heard a million times, it's hard for us to remember what it was like to get the training wheels off the bike. There's a lot of folks who are scared to death to get on that seat and grab them handlebars, and them training wheels are the only thing keeping them from hitting that pavement. Let's try to be patient. Let's try to do what we can to help folks and answer those questions and be there for them, be a lighthouse to them, just like somebody was a lighthouse to you. Don't forget where you came from, and don't forget that you at 1.2 asked a lot of questions, and you asked a lot of questions that you didn't have the right questions to even ask. Let's not forget that as folks are trying to get started and get off to a good start. Let's be there for them. Take the time to answer those questions. Take the time to just reach out to them. There's enough of the us and the thems constantly going around. There's enough of people trying to tear somebody else down as they grow their business or they grow their BR. They try to do the best they can. There's an awful lot of that going on right now. Let's be mindful of that. Let's try to be a lighthouse to others and not do that. I just want to remind folks that don't forget what it was like to try to get them training wheels off. That's where these new folks are at. Let's be there for them. And then always just want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world. Thanks for watching. Brian, it's all yours.